Okay, great.
Yes.
So hi everyone. So today I'm just going to share with you some tips and tricks. How are you going to create your research deck? Okay. So so before I start, I would like to some of you to answer the questions like, so what do you think a research deck is? Any volunteers? Or I'll just pick up some names randomly. So I saw the name Atika Hanifa. So what do you think is a research deck? Are you there? Hello? Atika is not there. Brian Yo?
Maybe it's how you start your research with how you plan out your research. That's what the
Okay. Right. Thank you. What about Jasmine Dash?
Yeah. I think it is like a stepwise stepwise methods when carrying out research.
Okay. Okay, that's good. I mean, like at least I understand what do you think your opinions on a research deck. Okay, so I know what to do next. So basically a research deck is a presentations that you're going to share your research idea or your research results to your audience within a short period of times, like 5 to 15 minutes. Okay, so because of the time is so short, so there's only one thing that you would like to tell your audience. Okay, so this is what research deck is. It's the presentations to share your ideas, your research ideas and your research results to your audience within a short limit of time. And because of that, there's only one thing that you would like to tell your audience. Okay, so before we create a research deck, we have to know how to build the story, how to build a research deck. Okay, so building a research deck is like building a building, right? So we have to know how to lay the foundations and build and complete the building eventually, and people understands what we are doing. All right, so tips number one is when you want to build a research deck, always start with context. Okay, so you have to define your problems and connect your problems to the world. Okay, you can tell people the urgency of your problems, or you can tell people the ideal futures if the problem is addressed. All right, so how do you define your problems? You can either use literature's reviews, cut out from the newspapers or published articles, or you can use some infographics, or you can show some big numbers like the mortalities of a certain cancers is very high, and that's why you are offering, you would like to address the problems. Okay, so tips number two is to share your ideas, your research ideas. Okay, this is when you put your ideas into spotlight. All right, and here's the tricky part. If you actually share too much ideas or too much results with your audience, and this is how your audience gonna feel like. Okay, because you have to remember, people have limited space in their brains when they're listening to your talk. All right, so you cannot, so it's very important that you always say the most important things to your audience and repeat it again and again so that people remember that. All right, tips number three, you have to show some realism. So what do I mean by that? So you have to prove it, how you're going to do it. So first of all, you have to tell people who are your team members, who are the experts in your team to deliver the idea, what are the tools that we're going to use, what are the methodology that they're going to use to study the problems, and do you have fundings to deliver the studies, and what are the evidence from previous results. So it's very crucial that you're going to tell your audience how you're going to deliver these things from A to B. Okay. And one last thing, so when you actually at the end of your research, that you must give people a vision of addressing the problem, because you have to tell people that the future is now. So this is when we have to address the problems and provide a solutions to your audience. Then you'll get a big fat yes from your audience later, or your panels. Okay, so now we know how to build the research deck, and we can proceed to creating a research deck. All right, so you must know how to build the stories, and now you have to use your skills to create the stories and tell people the stories. So tip number 1 is you basically have to speak the same language as your audience. So if your audience is actually a layman public members, so you couldn't use like scientific terms, you know, for your audience, they wouldn't have understand it. Nevertheless, if your audience are members from the scientific backgrounds and also your clinical colleagues, you can definitely use the language you used to use in your daily routines. Okay, so remember that speak the same language as your audience. All right, and you have to remember speaking is not the same as writing. Okay, so you use simple words. All right, so instead of using contraindicated, like we always do in your, so if your audience from the research background, from the clinical background, that's fine to use the word contraindicated. Okay, but if you speak to the public, you can use the word avoid so that people understand what you are trying to address. All right, so same if you are doing a research presentations to your own members and colleagues, you can use like radical prostatectomy. So what would be the layman terms for the public then? Anyone want to try? Or I just pick some name. Suganti? Are you there? No. Munira? Abdullah? Abdul Malik? Hello?
Or someone wants to volunteer?
You sound like you're alone, Jasmine.
Yes, they are not around actually.
I can try.
Maybe Suganti.
Okay, sure.
Um,
So what would you use? So radical prostatectomy is for our own colleagues, our scientific. So for layman's people, what would you use?
We can just tell generally like it is an operation for prostate cancer.
Yeah. So what is the terms that you're going to use to replace radical prostatectomy? Just try it. There's no correct or wrong. You already mentioned some of the word actually.
Yeah, but no, I think that maybe I'll just replace it with, I'll just explain by telling it is an operation for prostate cancer. I mean, it's my idea. I won't use.
Okay.
Yeah.
So thanks very much for trying. So I would actually say like just prostate surgery. Okay. So because everybody understand the words. All right. Thanks very much for participating. So like for example, like malignancy, you also can use. Anybody else want to try? Anas Kamarudin.
You can just say tumor, maybe.
Okay, tumor. What other words? Tumor is kind of difficult for them. Yeah, exactly. Just use the word cancer. Okay, you see the difference. So basically, if you're facing a different audience, there are difference of wording that you're going to use. Okay, depends on the context, and you also can use some metaphor to describe your work, and that will be a big aha moments for your audience. Okay, so for example, for the scientific community and for the clinical community, we always describe testis. For example, it's an organ which produces spermatozoa that is male reproductive cells, right? So if you are actually facing the general public explaining about this, I will actually do it a different way. I will say that testis is actually a factory producing a product called sperms, which is also involved in making a babies. Okay, so you can see the difference, the language that we have to speak when we have different audience, the general publics and also your scientific communities and your clinical communities. Okay, so you can also use like a metro map, you know, to describe a very difficult methodology for your clinical trials, for your RCT methods. Okay, you can just simplify it in the metro system from the way they being diagnosed and how the patient is going to undergo the treatments and how we're going to assess them eventually. Okay. All right. So tips number 2 is when you actually create your research deck, you must be able to guide your audience through your deck. Okay. It's very important for you as a speaker to guide them from A to Z.
Yeah.
Right. And you have to know that people simply can't listen to you and look and read your slide at the same time. And therefore, it is important for you to read the text on your slides out loud.
Hey, hang on, Justin. Aklan Ahmad, can you switch off, mute yourself, please? Thank you.
Yeah.
In fact, can everyone who's not speaking please mute yourself?
Aklan Ahmad. Who's the host? Can the host mute? Please thank. Gary, are you hosting?
Yeah, I think Gauri is hosting, right?
Okay, tips number 3 is to make your slides easy to follow. All right, you have to always remember that the slides are not the same as your lecture notes or your study notes. All right, so don't put more than 6 rows of text on a single slide. So when speaking, proceed in the same order as your slides. All right, so if you want to change the ribbon of your slides and your presentations, you want to emphasize a certain important key points, you can actually only have like 5 words in a single slide to actually emphasize the important points. Or you can actually put a quote or a very famous people to highlight the problems or the implications of your solutions. All right, you can also put big numbers in one single slide. Okay, and always remember that if you want to use infographic in your slide, just use it 1 per slide. Okay, and remember that this is an example of a very complicated infographics. People's not going to understand everything within a short period of time. So it's better for you to simplify your infographic and make it meaningful. All right, with an informative title. So in a nutshell, a good research deck is a presentation with good slides and understandable language based on your audience. Okay, and finally, you have to practice and practice again so that you will perform a good research presentations. All right, thanks very much, everyone, and thank you for your time.